You can spend an entire afternoon whipping the water into a froth, while heavy trout boiled the surface right in front of you, entirely ignoring everything you throw at them. That frustration almost always comes from treating a river like a static pond, tying on whatever fly looks good to you and hoping a hungry fish swims by. But Alberta's Elbow River operates as a highly calibrated biological engine. The entire food web is driven by a delicate balance of dissolved oxygen, the amount of breathable air in the water, and very specific temperature swings. Consistent success requires trading blind luck for observation, matching your presentations to the river's specific biological schedule. The Elbow River features an extreme geographical gradient. It begins high up in the alpine at Elbow Lake, where the water is freezing, fast, and relatively barren. From those peaks, it drops rapidly down through the foothills until it terminates in a heavily urbanized, much warmer delta, where it meets the Bow River in downtown Calgary. This topographical map tracks the river's descent, illustrating thermal thresholds. The rapid elevation drop creates distinct shifting temperature zones. These bands trigger aquatic macroinvertebrates. When water hits a specific degree, it acts as an alarm clock, signaling insects to hatch. Mastering the Elbow River means tracking these thermal zones, allowing you to predict exactly when and exactly where specific insects will emerge throughout the year. In late winter and early spring, the water hovers between 8 and 16 degrees Celsius. Trout are sluggish, conserving their energy in deep, slow-moving pools by picking off tiny millimeter-long midges. The first major biological event of the year kicks off in late March, with the emergence of the blue-winged olive, a relatively large springtime mayfly. The success of this hatch relies heavily on barometric pressure. Spring storms, heavy overcast skies, and rain prevent the insect's wings from drying quickly. Unable to fly away, the mayflies are pinned in the surface film. This weather anomaly traps them, creating a highly predictable, incredibly vulnerable food source for opportunistic trout. It creates a counterintuitive reality for the angler. The most explosive spring surface fishing reliably happens during the absolute worst weather. As spring runoff clears and water temperatures push toward 20 degrees Celsius, the river hits its maximum entomological productivity. Massive golden stoneflies and salmonflies begin to emerge. These are large, clumsy flyers that crash violently onto the water, triggering aggressive, explosive strikes right against the river's undercut banks. Concurrently, evening caddisfly hatches blanket the river. Yet, anglers often find themselves completely ignored while perfectly floating an adult dryfly right over feeding fish. This cross-section of the river illustrates a behavior known as caloric calculus. Trout maximize their energy by ignoring the fully formed adults on the surface, choosing instead to intercept the highly vulnerable pupae rushing upward through the water column. To catch these fish, you have to adjust your tactics. By trailing a subsurface sparkle pupa pattern beneath a highly visible dryfly, you can perfectly mimic that ascending motion. The trout's drive for caloric efficiency dictates its behavior more than the visible activity on the surface. By late summer, the primary aquatic hatches start to taper off. The river's caloric load shifts away from the riverbed and moves to the riparian ecotone, the rich vegetation growing right on the shorelines. Warm thermal winds sweep through the valley, physically blowing heavy terrestrial insects like grasshoppers, ants, and beetles out of the grass and into the current. This forces trout to change their position, abandoning the center of the river to hug the grassy undercut banks. During these dog days of summer, you can completely abandon aquatic entomology. The strategy shifts entirely to casting large terrestrial patterns directly into these windrift zones. As ambient temperatures drop in autumn, the river transitions back to tiny late-season mayflies. Catching fish now demands delicate presentations on ultra-fine 6X tippet, fishing line thin enough to be nearly invisible. But autumn also brings the most dramatic biological shift of the year, the arrival of massive migratory brown trout. These large fish push their way out of the Bow River, navigating up into the Elbow strictly to stage for their fall spawn. Triggered by shorter daylight hours and dropping temperatures, these pre-spawn browns become hyper-aggressive. They aren't striking large streamer flies out of hunger. They are viciously defending their staging ground from perceived threats. Autumn shifts the river's dynamic, as the technical nature of the hatch is overtaken by the territorial aggression of spawning predators. When you look at the full calendar, you realize that an insect hatch is never a static event that happens everywhere at once. It is a moving target. On this stylized map, the elevation gradient manipulates time. Emergence starts in the warm, lower urban sections first. You can literally chase the calendar. Miss a hatch in the city? Drive upstream and find that exact same hatch starting weeks later in the foothills. True mastery of this watershed requires anticipating the exact intersection of elevation, local weather, and the insect life cycle. But understanding the river's biological clock comes with a strict ethical responsibility, particularly during the late autumn spawn. Brown trout construct nests called redds to incubate eggs. Look for distinct, oval-shaped patches of exceptionally clean, light-colored gravel on the river bottom. It is absolutely critical that you never wade through these gravel patches, which crushes the incubating embryos. Furthermore, targeting the fish actively guarding these nests is highly unethical. Respecting this final, fragile stage of the seasonal calendar is the only way to ensure the river's biological engine successfully resets for the following spring.